Don't know how much.
All right, everybody, ready to get started? Okay, so just to honor time, like I said, and because there are many things happening after hours, the trunk or treat is from 5 to 7. The first meeting of our brand new calendar committee. Welcome, members, to our committee. Brand spanking new. You're welcome. Thank you for applying very early and getting the application in. Made that decision easy.
You say applying?
Yes.
Apply. Yeah, some got a chance to apply and be chosen. Others kind of just said, you got an invite, and maybe that's why you're here.
You, Dr. White, anything, sir.
So, 4:30 to 6, we have 3 meetings. All of them will all kind of be structured the same. 4:30 to 6. More often than not, we try to get out a little earlier than that, but just to allow for time and possible conversations and other things that might come about from the agenda here. So that's usually the setup, is about an hour and a half. And so today, hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to either look at the slide deck, look at the agenda, look at some of this stuff. Is anybody just not familiar with anything I'm talking about so far? Hopefully some of everybody's seen at least one of these things, or at least had an opportunity to kind of discuss or talk. So it's not like you're just hearing the calendar, the big word calendar for the first time. Because when we say the calendar, there's a lot of things that go into the decision making, the development, and then of course the adoption for the new calendar. So in prior years, we've kind of always done the calendar through the district level committee, which is our decision making committee. Rather than have that be another thing thrown to them, it was kind of decided last year based on just how that process went to have a separate process entirely, so that a new committee could have a singular focus just on the calendar, because we were learning that there was a lot of things going on simultaneously with the decision-making committee at the district level, where this almost seemed like we were rushing or just didn't have enough time. And so I wanted to create a committee where we could all meet, have one focus, and plenty of time to do this the right way, and of course involve the appropriate and proper stakeholders. And to, of course, get hopefully a few new faces who have never been a part of the committee before to be a part of this process for this year. And so really, really excited that everyone's here. I know this isn't as many people as I would like, because I got a couple other events I'm competing against. And that's just the unfortunate part of planning, and then of course running into other things that are happening throughout the year. But the next 2 meetings, we shouldn't have that problem. So hopefully that will be a good thing for us when we get there. Until then, first meeting is here. If you have not seen this document, you should, because I've shared this with you. So if you're having access issues or just struggling to get there, let me know. I will figure out how to help you with that. And like I said, this is the document we'll use to kind of use as like our hub, where everything will come from this, all the documents, all the links. Come on in. Ms. Araceli, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. And feel free to get some food if you want. There's hopefully a few things left out there. And so, with that said, are there any questions so far? Anything at all about what we're about to embark on? Our academic calendar journey we're about to take together? Okay. So, this is really exciting, because it's just like we all have a thought, we all have an opinion, and I'm really, really excited because I feel like, again, various stakeholders from across the district and throughout the community. So for instance, with the show of hands, who is a parent? Who is a parent only, non-employee? Just a parent.
Just a parent.
Non-employee. But you're an employee, you dingo.
I'm a parent.
We're face bullying over here, sorry.
Face is amazing right there. Anyways.
Parent?
But he said a non-working.
Oh, okay.
He
Just
said
a parent only,
non-working.
like,
Just
you
a
could be a
parent.
parent and something else, but if you're just a parent.
Just a parent.
You don't work for TMI.
You don't work for
Yeah, I guess I
TM.
should just say that.
Yes. I am a parent.
Yeah.
Coco.
It's okay.
Congratulations. Thank you for
I
being
feel like I
here.
need to do over on that. But I was
I feel like you
gonna like skip right ahead. I was gonna fast forward by a little remote.
Doing great, doing great.
So, if you've not had a chance yet, this is the committee list. If you are interested in getting a hold of somebody, all you gotta do is kind of hover over their name and it will kind of give their Outlook information here. And then of course, for our non-employees, you can't, but you can still click and access their email if you like, okay? So, this is the committee list. Moving on. This was the application that those who were not already pre-selected got a chance to fill out and complete. Here are the 3 agendas, and of course the look-aheads. And then this is kind of important. If you'd like to kind of go back historically through all the calendars from about 2019 through this school year, you can. And you can kind of see the evolution of what's been happening from about 5 or 6 years ago. Because I would say every year's been a little different. And I would say this last year in particular is really different. And so based on our kind of trend and history of how we do the calendar, perhaps we'll create another calendar where it looks nothing like the one it looks like right now. And we'll talk about how that might be because of all the variables in just a second. So to kind of just really start us off the right way, why are we here? And what's really the goal and the purpose and the objective of this committee, your role as a committee member, and some of the duties and responsibilities and even commitments that I would just kind of like for all of us to understand. And so, again, this committee was born out of a need from last year when we decided that at the district level, it would be better suited to handle this particular responsibility separate and apart through our own committee. So the goal from that was to hopefully learn a little bit more about the calendar process, discuss some of the things that we learned from last year later on that we wish we kind of put as a priority up front, rather than allowing that to be something that happened after the fact and it was too late to do something about it once it's already kind of in the books. And so one of the things that we did learn was just how, if we are trying to improve school day attendance, how do we need to build a calendar where we're going to maximize student attendance? Because sometimes when we realize we have a calendar where we have a whole bunch of early release days, right? Sounds like a great idea. Let's have early release. We get half a day. The adult gets half a day. That sounds pretty nice, right? But then we realize, oh, well, that half a day is on a Friday, which runs into a full week intersession, and gee, it would be kind of easy just to take that full day off, right? Whether it's the adult or possibly even the student. So we're trying to do things to either create a better situation for us, the adult, or we're trying to do something for attendance, but then we don't realize that what we're doing might actually have the opposite effect, or if we're not really considering everything all at once before we start making decisions, that certain dominoes can fall, and then we don't realize the effects of those dominoes until much later on. And so you hear early release. We will have some early release days this year because of football and athletics and the need to facilitate those events. But generally speaking, you wouldn't necessarily want to always turn to an early release day because of the effects it has on student attendance. And so that's just one example, because if you weren't necessarily thinking about the early release day in terms of the stakeholders impacted, perhaps the timing of the year, is that morning early release, late arrival, kind of early release where kids are coming much later in the day rather than leaving. So all these things we will talk about in this committee. And so hopefully that's starting to get your brain going a little bit about some of the factors that maybe you are more passionate about or just have noticed from this year's calendar that, wow, like, who made that decision? Because I'm sure that's probably been at least a thought that's crossed a couple of our minds in here a time or two, and that's okay. That's why y'all are here. And so we are also looking to do more time for the campus and more time for departmental professional learning. So that's definitely something we are going to prioritize. And one thing in particular that you guys can look at is the attendance tracking. We track attendance every day. and we've been tracking it since 22-23, so we're starting to be able to build some comparable data year over year. And so if you'd like to kind of look and maybe either identify a day or a particular day on the calendar where we just know we're going to have bad attendance, well, we can either verify that or trend that out for a couple of years to see, yeah, we have a really bad problem going into Thanksgiving on this particular week with attendance. Perhaps maybe as a calendar committee, we can build some things in there that might help with that. Just a thought. STAR EOC results, as we talk about attendance, of course, student performance is just as critical. And so this is just another document we can kind of refer back to as far as just scores and a quick review of how we are currently doing and how we've done in the past. This is just a one-pager that kind of captures everything. But if you'd like to just look a little bit more specifically at some things, all these tabs here can kind of help you with that. And then, of course, enrollment and transfers. This has been a nice little hot topic as of late with the bond and communicating about the bond and just what that looks like in that area. If you have not seen this chart, this is our recent chart on transfers versus in-district enrollment. And you can see based on just how this is going up, and this chart right, this little bar is going down, that we are growing internally, but externally we're losing. So while it may seem like we're not growing, we are. We're just not also retaining the transfer number that we've had from about 5 or 6 years ago. But if we were growing in this direction, and we were also growing in this direction, we'd almost be considered fast growth because of the trend going pretty high, okay? And so does that have an impact on our calendar? I would say yes, right? When I think of transfers in the calendar, I think of beginning of the year, and how often do we have the majority of our transfers starting on day one with us? When do our transfers typically really start rolling in and
Regular school day, regular start of the school year.
so knowing that, we take major ADA hits because they're not here for us to collect ADA on them. It's like it's a big zero until they show up. And so if we have a good portion of our students not showing up until, end of first 6 weeks, second 6 weeks, that's just a chunk of stuff we're missing from kids that if we had our day start differently, or if we just were able to maybe put something different together for that, or if we knew that was an issue, we could maybe have a communication plan or something else to help just, I guess make up the difference there. Since that has definitely been a trend since I've been here. Every year it seems like we start off a little light, and then as we pick up steam moving into the year, we see more and more students rolling in, and before we know it, we have Labor Day, and after Labor Day, they're all here. And of course, just looking here at the duties and commitments, really wanting to make sure that with this calendar, and everybody take a couple seconds, look at Ms. Fairmaker.
I'm going to have fun, I'm sorry. Y'all are hard at work and everything, thank you. But I'm going next door to middle school.
We'll be behind you momentarily,
I'm
since
sure you
most
will.
of us are wanting to go there
Thank
too.
y'all.
Let's go. Love it.
So cute.
It's on Amazon too, I love it. So, big thing for this, and because we have just finished, on Monday, we had the district improvement plan approved by the school board. At the prior month school board meeting in September, we had the district strategic plan approved. And so with these two new documents, kind of just in their most recent forms, keep in mind that as we do build this calendar, everything will be referenced and cross-checked against those documents to ensure alignment to everything that we're needing or wanting to do as a district. Our goals, our strategies, our objectives, and also, of course, at the campus level too. And so mainly, that will help us keep everything that we do in this committee, the main thing about student achievement. And as we talk about the calendar and as we look at building the calendar, it's very easy for us, the adult, to get stuck on what benefits us. And through our lens, how do we want this calendar to look? Because maybe we want this particular week off, or we really like winter break, so we're gonna have a really long winter break, versus maybe some of us prefer summer and want a bit of a longer summer. And so my question would be, I hear all that, but what's gonna be best for the students? Because when we have a month off in January, how does that impact students, right? It's gonna impact them a lot differently than it would if they just had 2 weeks off. And is that a good impact, a bad impact? I don't know. It could be good, it could be bad. We've never done it, so we don't really have any data to compare against it, but when you hear it, it kind of makes you wonder like, that's a lot of time off in between. So I wonder how that's gonna be for kids coming back and getting resituated to the next semester, knowing that as soon as they do come back, it's gonna be pedal to the metal, because before they know it, we're gonna be STAR testing. Especially knowing that we've got another intersession break in March, and then April's right around the corner, and then boom, we're testing. So, with that said, going into kind of the heart of this meeting, which is the parameters and requirements. And so, this is where, if you weren't paying attention before, I would start paying attention now. And that's okay. Some of us, I take a while to warm up too, so no worries, no worries. Biggest thing here are the 4 things in red: instructional time, instructional days, teachers and students. And then of course, here's kind of like the wild card, but we'll get to that in a second. So, starting with instructional time, there are certain rules and requirements that we all need to know about and keep in mind as we do build this calendar, because it's not like you just get free reign in a blank sheet. There are some boxes we need to keep ourselves in so that we're in compliance with the state and everybody else. So one thing in particular is the school year. It's got to be a minimum of 75.6. That's both operational and instructional. For our purposes, we will probably use operational and instructional minutes the same, but they're not technically the same. So the difference between the two is operational minutes are when you physically start school and when you end school. But instructional minutes is when the first bell rings and the last bell rings. Does everybody understand the difference? Because you can open up at 8 o'clock and you've got 15 minutes, 20 minutes of breakfast or morning tutorials or something to that effect, but your first period bell is until 8:30. So technically your instructional minutes don't begin until 8:30. And so that plays a major role in how we build a calendar when we factor in the minutes that are required for just being open for the year, which is 75.6. And then if you want to look at it from an hour standpoint, it is 1,260 hours. And then, of course, the days. If you are familiar with the days that we have currently had in the past for students, it's been 178 days. For staff, it's always 187. That's the contract time. So from 178 to 187, what is the difference between staff and students? 9 days, right? So if students are not in school for those 9 days, what are we, the staff members, doing in those 9 days?
Professional development.
Professional development. So if we are going from 178 to 180, that means those 9 days are going from what? 9 to 7. So do you see the change? So what we're doing is we're going to add 2 additional student days, because we'll talk about why in a second. But as we do that, that's going to reduce those 9 PD days down to 7. Okay, so that's a change. And I don't know how we're thinking about that currently, but it seems like even with the 9 days we do have, we have no days for PD. None. So as we move forward, we're going to have to be real careful about where we're going to want these 7 days of PD. Because we could easily put 5 days of PD up front at the beginning of the year, and that leaves only 2 days that we would have for any other type of PD day to have in the year. Okay? And the reason why we're going to 180 days rather than 178 is because we are looking to apply for ADSE, which is a grant, and it stands for Additional Days School Year. And the only way to be eligible for this grant is to have 180 days of school with students. And if we have 178, we are not eligible, we can't apply. And this is a great grant because it will bring in additional revenue and just more options that we haven't had before for our students during like the summertime, during intersession time, during those times of the year. Okay? Types of minutes, or I guess school day. 7-hour school day, minimum, 420 minutes, minimum. Types of minutes, like I said, House Bill 2610. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the law and the history behind the requirements, feel free to click here and read away. These things aren't just made up, there are laws behind them. And so if you'd definitely like to know a little bit more about the why, click there and read away. Time considerations. And so one thing I do want to point out is just the structure of how we are set up, elementary versus secondary. So for instance, at the primary and intermediate, we've got 435 minutes. Middle is 440, high school is 455, and our alternative campus is different, so that's why you see a reduced number there. But generally speaking, the more consistent we are with our minutes for all campuses, the better, because when we have to do these things called early release or modify the calendar because of athletics or a bad weather day or AC goes out or just, something causes us to not be able to run school, well, we have to adjust the minutes. Because as we report to the state, every day we're telling the state we're following the same bell schedule every day until we have to modify a day. For instance, this upcoming one, November 3rd on Friday, will be a modified day. We didn't originally report that, and so we're having to go back into our system and update the new numbers, which then takes our overall minutes down. So you can see, based on how the minutes are for each of the campuses, high school's great. They've got tons of minutes banked so that if we do have bad weather days or AC goes out or just something, catastrophic happens, they got plenty of time to where no time needs to be made up. However, if you look at the primary and intermediate, they're almost already down to where if there was a real big snowstorm like the ice apocalypse thing that happened a couple years ago, that was a whole week. If we had something like that happen, primary and intermediate would have to make up those days that they were not able to capture with the banked minutes they have. And so I didn't know if y'all were aware of that.
No waivers?
Oh,
For weather?
no, not for weather, not for things like this. Because that's why we have minutes.
Build it into the
That's why we
calendar.
have the minutes now. Because we used to have waivers when it was just days, but the minutes were to get away from waivers so that you factor bad weather days or just the need to bank minutes in the event that you might have a bad weather day. Because generally speaking, you can't go throughout a year without at least having some modification done to the calendar, right? So just keep that in mind as we move forward, because one of these days running that lean this early on, I mean, God forbid, coach, we go 5 deep in the playoffs or something, and then we're already gone through our early release days because of that right there. Because we're not going to build in the playoff games quite yet into the calendar. So with that said, are there any questions about kind of just how this works, why we're talking about it, so on and so forth? Mr. Rubino, do you have anything? Okay. All right. Moving on. So again, just wanting to just be clear on that. Modified school days, and again, just the impact on special programs. One thing in particular, as we kind of think about impact, we usually stay very general and broad in scope. But as we in this committee talk and drill down and drill down and drill down, when we modify a calendar or do an early release day or just anything that changes how we just typically do business, what kind of impact does that have on specific programs? One program in particular that gets a major impact done to it is pre-K. Because of half-day pre-K and the half-day funding. And so if we're doing early release and we're not probably gonna get funding that day for those kids, even though they're coming, because of the reporting requirements along with that. And so that's one thing in particular where we just have to look at as one of the variables, where if we're wanting a certain thing, we just have to know the potential impact that might have on a particular program.
I do have a question.
Yeah,
So, just thinking about it, so like, let's say that something happens and we do have to make up some student days, but like these early release days, the teachers are staying and working a day.
right.
So doesn't that extend their past their one, yeah,
Not per se, because that originally wasn't built as a early release day. It was a part of the 187 contract. It's not like we added that day. It's still part of the 187.
but if the students have to make up more?
They would have to make up more because they weren't in session for the minutes we were reporting as part of the 75-6.
Right.
So like that goes kind of the operational versus instructional. Like the teachers are here working, and that's good and great because that's part of the contract time, the 187. But student-wise, if they don't meet a certain X number of minutes because of early release and all that, that means they will have to make up that time. If you're asking, does the staff then at that point get penalized? I don't know, I've never run into that problem
Because I mean,
before.
they're gonna be working actually additional.
But honestly, like if that.
We would
if
build
that
the 5 or
happens,
10 minutes
You would,
to each
you would
day.
extend each day 5 to 10 minutes,
To
so they would,
compensate.
Yeah.
they would still be within their work days. I mean, it would be like a hurricane wiped us out or something,
Right.
but then in that situation, our teachers wouldn't be here anyway, so that would be a non-work day for them, and they would carry that in.
Yeah, so it would say you needed, you had 2 days over, so you needed, 800 something minutes. We would just add, we would divide that by the remaining days, and we would just add the 5, 10, 15 minutes to the day, each day, so that we didn't have to make up another day. Any questions?
I do have one.
Yeah,
So we were looking at the difference in primary and secondary.
yeah.
So if secondary had enough minutes to cover whatever that absence was, would secondary still have to go to school on those makeup days?
No, because you covered your time.
Okay,
But note too that we wouldn't necessarily try to add a day like that. We would just build the minutes in so that it didn't seem like they were going and then
Gotcha,
y'all were
okay.
off. They would just be in school longer and
On a day when
your
we were
bell
in school
schedule would just be
already. Okay.
regular and not modified.
okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Okay. So far, so good on instructional time. So again, these are the parameters we just have to stay in. Instructional days. So, one thing in particular that we did this year where I'm like, you know what? Maybe that was something we needed to spend a little more time talking about. We decided to have a full 5-day work week return. I'm pretty sure we were the only in the state of Texas that did that. Pretty sure. And I honestly haven't asked too many people about how they felt about that because I already knew how I felt about it. And I felt like that was good enough at that point. I didn't need to really figure out if that was a thing. I was tired that first week.
There were absences on the second, third, like the rest of the week, there was absences, and it shouldn't be like that the first week of
You would,
school.
yeah, you would think that it's only gonna go down from here, but it was already, we already kind of were going down on that second and third day, which is kind of, you're right, we did.
Nice.
And you can confirm that by going to the attendance here and looking at that if you really want to. So,
It also gives us time for adjusting anything as teachers and as anybody who's an administrator, like to adjust over the weekend so that we fix it for the new coming week.
right,
Because whenever everything starts in the beginning, some things need to be adjusted, so I feel like starting on a Wednesday, like we have in the past years, kind of worked out a little bit better, because teachers could also come on a Saturday before, and just kind of adjust some things, fix some things, and then administrators as well were there on the weekends. And then come that Monday, we're kind of like more prepared for them.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The only reason we didn't go with the Wednesday was because originally Wednesdays were early release, and then we had half the parents not there on time. But now that we don't do that, then any day is free game.
Yeah.
It's,
Anybody else have any comments about that? Having a week return for the full 5 days? And not to mention, just being able to have a transition for yourself, to give yourself the ability to transition back into the year. There's no need to go 0 to 100 in the first week of the school year. There's plenty of time for that, right? Because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so I did receive several emails from teachers kind of letting me know that they kind of wanted it already to be known and for me to put it in my back pocket for this moment in time to say, hey, like, can you kind of maybe look at that again on the calendar? Because we didn't really like how that went. And like, I get it. I totally get it. So trying to stay away from a Monday. Generally speaking, on Wednesday is nice because it's right in the middle. Okay? Last day of school, the rule is can't do it before May 15th. That's just the rule. Did you all know that was a rule? Yep. May 15th is the earliest you can graduate in Texas. Can't do it any sooner. But as you already know that because we're still somewhat testing still at that time. And so you wouldn't even want to try to do that anyways, just because of the need to help students finish out testing for the year. So the whole kind of concept is, do you care about having things finished before Memorial Day or after Memorial Day? It seems to be the trend that, at least for my last couple of districts, that it's almost like a cardinal sin to go past Memorial Day.
Yes.
And in Houston and everywhere else, it's like, no big deal. We go into June, another week, blah, 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 blah. But knowing that here, if we are bound by the Memorial Day, that kind of locks us in and reduces the amount of flexibility we would have if we could dip into June and give ourselves another week or two and then really look at maybe creating more of a true year-round where we're not bound by a specific day because none of us want to come back after Memorial Day. Not saying you have to, just a thought. Types of days, again, instructional day, that's with students. Professional development day, that's usually what's called the district. It's like, is that a district day? Is that a campus day? I always get that question. Staff development means campus. Professional development means district. Teacher work day, well, in my world, that means teacher work day. That's the individual. That means you do what you need to do in your classroom. Okay? There is at least, the rule is that all teachers in the state of Texas get that work day the preceding day prior to the first day of school. That's why it's always there. So you will always have a work day prior to the first day of instruction. Have you ever wondered about that? Has that always happened here? Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. It's always happened, Miss Chapa. It's always happened.
It has.
It's always happened. We just follow the rules. And it's very, very clear. It's very, very clear in policy that you can't have a work day prior. Like it's got to be a teacher work day and then first day of school. Because of that, we can't have you go to a conference or to be in a faculty meeting all day and then expect you to be ready for the first day of school. That's almost unfair at that point. Philip? Philip, is that you? Did you just come back from the region?
Yeah.
Good for you, sir. Welcome. Okay. Days and dates considerations. Holidays. That means students and staff. Okay? If it said student holiday there, what does that mean? Just the students. But holidays mean both students and staff. It's very rare to have a staff holiday.
That would work very well.
Staff holiday is what you call the non-187 days in the year.
There you go.
Your
No
187
staff
is your
on campus, but
contract,
the
and
kids
everything
are.
else is your staff holiday. Early release, students versus staff. When we say early release, we mean student early release. Yeah, sorry. That's what it means. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't necessarily apply to you in some ways. It's just specifically we mean students. From this time to this time, that's when they're expected to be here, and then at that point, they get to go. For us, the general rule is that you stay behind to honor contract time, but that time can be done differently or used differently based on campus needs, based on principal decisions, or just anything else that's happening at that time. The two biggies with graduation, we tend to do an early release because of graduation, and then of course because of athletics. For travel reasons, we have to let them go, and that we don't always know at the time of the calendar, but that's just something to keep in mind, that eventually that will probably be something we have to add. Hey, Coach, do you anticipate us traveling around the world like we do right now for next year? Like when we have to go to like Zabata and
Around the world,
LaFerriere?
sir.
Yeah,
Play in Europe, is that what you're
around
asking?
Texas, do our Texas tour.
You cannot predict what's going to be in your district. So it depends on alignment, who goes up, who goes down. I mean, if you're talking about who you think is going to go down, Kingsville might go down. Bishop, well, they're not a district, but so like Zapata,
They're our
probably
volleyball
not,
district. They're
Hidalgo,
our district.
Like Laredo,
yeah.
like,
Laredo Harmony doesn't have
they're
football.
just not down the road. Those are several hours away.
Yeah, those are, yeah, Fedia.
And then, of course, what's kind of been new is the exchange day. This is where if you guys just comply by completing the compliance trainings, you know, like how I said that, if you just comply by completing the compliance trainings, that will allow you to switch out that time that you have gained by doing that those trainings for the exchange day that we are using at the end of the year. Is everybody aware when that exchange day is happening? The end of the year. So there is a professional development day. Do we have a calendar somewhere? We don't?
It's on your link.
On the thing.
It's on your link.
So right here, on the 23rd is a staff development day.
We have till the 23rd.
So essentially, this is your exchange day.
You don't have till the 23rd.
You definitely don't. You have until March something, right? I think it's in March.
I've been eating my lunch too.
I'll be honest, I haven't looked at EduHero in a couple minutes, but I'm pretty sure it's in
I
March.
think it's December. I think it's December 23rd.
Before the end of the semester.
December 21st or December 20th.
Yeah, I think it's December 23rd.
Okay. Philip's here to answer the question before December break. But generally speaking, the majority will finish, but if that's a question, it needs to be done before December. So, again, I know how much y'all love the bloodborne pathogens, so don't forget about that. Don't forget about it.
Sir, can I just bring up something?
Yeah?
When the EduHeroes do, I think it's too late in the year. Because the things that are in it are for things that we're supposed to recognize in students early in the year, like abuse, suicide, all of those things dealing with bloodborne pathogens. And I feel like a lot of teachers are gonna wait till the end to do it. And those are things that we need to recognize in our students throughout the year.
But aren't y'all covering that in your faculty meetings too? And the counselors going out and about and doing all those required lessons we tell them about? Or is it just because?
They are, but I just feel like maybe the teachers aren't there. Like, I've already done my EduHero, but like, I feel like there's a lot of people that won't do it, and there's warning signs in their classes that they're not seeing.
Warning signs.
Well, and honestly, if they're repeaters in our district, they have one
I know
full
they've done
year,
it, but if they're
so.
new,
If they're new, we need to probably emphasize it more.
maybe require it earlier.
If they were new, a lot of that also was hit at the orientations.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, I'm
We
just
covered
saying.
all that with our new folks.
I just wanted to make sure.
No, I'm with you, yeah.
You're right.
But didn't you just take
Is it, that's fine, yeah.
Well, and if they haven't done it, there's no accountability.
Especially the abuse.
I think it's 'cause I just don't
Yeah, like
see
that's a big one.
anything.
It has to be done, yeah.
So, when it comes to that, I will have to go back and look at my due dates. But when it comes to compliance, if you are returning employee, it works differently for you. It's not like it's truly a yearly thing. We just do it yearly because it's best practice and it's needed, and we don't want you to forget all the things that, you know, when you go over on your staff holidays, on your non-contract time, you come back, you forget everything. So that's why we make you do it all over again. And that's when you remember all the things that you forgot. So the way we cover it is yearly through returning, but then orientation and first timers, they get an additional level, and then fall into the returner where they kind of fall on that yearly cycle of things, okay? Also, I know for a fact a lot of that information was covered on the first day when everybody met as a faculty in that whole group, when the principal was talking and it probably seemed really long. I know he or she covered all that information during that meeting. Okay, we talked about contract days. Resignations, that's kind of a key point too. Depending on how the calendar's set up, depending on when the 45-day occurs, depending on recruiting and hiring and staffing, depending on all of that can change things depending on how the calendar falls. Because we start early, our time period is earlier rather than others who are much after us. So when it comes to recruiting and hiring, it just looks different because we're already knowing or in advance, whereas we're still waiting on others to make decisions. Okay? Pay dates, that's always important. So if this is something that is super important to you and you have a specific need to align something to the calendar so it matches just right, just know that this information is here and can be used to help make decisions. Work days, day before the first day of school, like we said, that's required, so that's why we have it. Planning periods, there are requirements with that. 45 minutes a day or 450 minutes in a 2-week period. Okay? Just because you have planning period doesn't mean that other things can't happen or other things can't be asked of you. It's just, are we within the 2-week period of the 450 minutes that need to be allotted to all teachers so that they do have their planning time? Because it can be looked at from a 45-minute standpoint or a 2-week period standpoint. Generally speaking, it's a 2-week because there can be some things that need to happen day to day, but as long as in that 2-week period it's 450 minutes for you, you're fine. If you're a teacher and you don't even know what 450 minutes is because you can't remember the last time you had a period off to plan anything, well, come talk to me later and we'll figure that out. Grade reporting periods, this is always a nice topic. I assume it will be a nice topic for us when we really kind of get into the planning of the calendar. 6 weeks versus 9 weeks. Grade cycle, marking period. So currently we're 6 weeks, right? Which is great because that matches PEIMS reporting because PEIMS reporting is done by 6 weeks. However, 9 weeks is also interesting too because when you look at 9 weeks, that means you have, as a teacher, less grades to report because you're only having 4 cycle reporting grades, right? 4 versus 6. Anything else that might come about with the 9 weeks? Yes?
Well, there's eligibility.
Eligibility is a big one.
You get a little extra
Yes.
time
Yes.
there. But as coming from a district that was on 9 weeks, it sometimes, and then not having like a day or a planning day or things like that built into each 9 weeks, it got really, really long with no real break for the teacher in terms of thought processes too, and just overwhelming, okay. And it ended up being a little bit harder to keep UIL eligibility records up to date. So, again, I can go either way, but those are just some things that from the teacher perspective, kids didn't seem to phase one way or another. But if we have, here, if we go to a 9 weeks and we have that intercession at the end of the 9 weeks or something like that, that's a little break. But when you go for a 9 weeks and there's so little
Would the
change.
reporting period
But
have to?
that very first 9 weeks in terms of eligibility was a nightmare or.
Because you have to report it 6 weeks no matter what the first 6 weeks.
You have to report it and.
Whether you're 9 weeks.
And you
district
had to
or-
have like a certain number of major grades and certain number of minor grades and all those kinds of things. And that first 3 weeks, really, how do you get a major grade in when you're just, it's kind of hard, but anyway.
And then for dual credit college courses,
That's another thing.
that's a really big challenge to do 6 weeks. Because you're collecting GPAs for seniors that don't align to a 6-week grading period. They align to semesters at 9 weeks. So that's a big challenge too, if you stick with a 6-week calendar.
That's on the flip side.
I know high school would have wanted me to say that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Anybody else got anything they have, or have been asked or requested to say to the committee? Because this was a really good back and forth last year. We had several back and forths with, pro 6 weeks, pro 9 weeks, and of course, the 6 weeks kind of won out. That will, again, be a variable that everybody will get a chance to vote on. As we kind of end the meeting today, we'll talk about the preference survey that's going to be sent out for the community to vote on for their preference. This will be part of what they get to vote on. You all, as included in that, will get a chance to vote. And so this document, as we're kind of just looking at it, kind of talks a little bit about some of the things that we just got done talking about. But
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah.
Do we have, I know I'm at ACC and everything is different. Do
This is
we
just-
have Skyward?
No, we have this thing called eSchool Plus.
Okay.
That says Skyward on there.
It says Skyward on there.
It sure does. This is just a generic 6 weeks versus 9 weeks frequently asked questions.
What are intersessions have to be?
If you're talking about eligibility, starting school earlier is way more harmful because you have 2 6-week cycles before you're not even done with the season.
Yeah.
So you have to do it twice, where everybody else has to make it through one, and then then you're in the playoffs. You're like, oh, okay, so you can stay up on things, but the year-round schooling or starting that early is an interesting paradigm.
Go ahead.
Would our intersessions have to be impacted by a reporting period?
No,
Not necessarily.
we would get to decide that.
So we could go 6 weeks and then have intersection and then come back.
Did we just find a compromise to bring the best of both worlds together?
I can see a problem with that
9
though.
weeks and have 2 weeks.
With the,
Now we're really putting the brain to use, because in theory, you think about 6 weeks, right? The 1 week after is our intercession break. Well, if it's 9 weeks, then you kind of think about it as 2 weeks for a break.
meetings for the break off.
Or it could just be 9 weeks where after every 6 weeks, we take a break. It can be done any way we want. As long as we're all keeping in mind what's in the best interest of students.
9 and 10.
Because if you're asking me, the adult, I like the 9 weeks because then I get 2 weeks, which means maybe out of those 2 weeks, I'll take my 1 week off, give myself a true break, and then the 1 week, because I'm crazy, I want to continue to work and do an intercession planning session so I can get a little extra money, work with some students, and put my time to use there, but I'm also getting a break at the same time. So again, best of both worlds.
Get money for vacation.
Right.
Unless you're a kindergartner
Yeah.
and you just got your first 9 weeks of routines, and then you're gonna take 2 weeks off and start all over again.
Well, and the parents too.
There it is.
Carrying everything
Bring it all the way back down to elementary again. Very
You're gonna
good.
kill transfers with that
I'd
for
rather
parents
do
coming in.
the 9 weeks, but 6 weeks with 1 weekend, or not a 2-week break.
Just a show of hands real quick, since we're talking about this. Who likes it the way it is right now? Don't mess with it, don't touch it, it's fine.
You mean, who prefers 6 weeks?
Yeah, as it is right now. The calendar as it is.
After every 6 weeks, right? Is that
Yeah, we have 6 weeks, we take an intercession.
Talking about the year-round school also?
Yeah, just how it is.
Because the
I
thing
can
about
tell you, year-round school
coaches don't
is
get
not
off.
going anywhere.
They know 2 weeks off.
We'd all be hung at the stake, I think, if we tried to touch
I work
it.
200.
Coach, but I said that was just an example, Coach. I wasn't exactly.
Of any kind, your season's not done. It's not 2 weeks off.
Well, and for coaches,
Like having those weeks to work with them, like it's perfect. I get rehearsals in.
Spring break.
I'm not having a break,
Right.
but then I don't have to fight classes.
What's so funny about that? You know what everybody else does that isn't year-round school? They teach until like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it's like 10
They
or
teach until the end of the year, and then they take their summer off, and then they come back and do it all over again. So to hear that's very
So
interesting.
I graduated from here in '06, so
Yeah.
I started a long time ago, right? So the reason my mom went to Cal Allen, grew up in Cal Allen, and put us in TM, one, because the academic is better, and two, because we got that break and we weren't just getting slammed with homework. My kids now are both in 8th grade and 6th grade.
Yeah.
The same reason I have my kids here. I mean, obviously, because I graduated here too, but it's nice to have that break.
How is it, are your, and you, what about like working and the whole, babysitting or?
Childcare.
Childcare,
So
thank you, that's
coming-
the good term. I'm
Coming
sorry.
into it, I mean,
Childcare.
if you're moving into this district, you know that's what you're getting into, so you have to be prepared for that. Luckily, my mom worked for this district at ACC for a very long time, and so she watches my kids. I get that, I have that luxury.
Yeah.
They have the camps, TM puts on the camps at the
Right.
little schools.
Okay, so we.
Middle school and up, they should be able to stay at home. I know y'all probably don't like doing the camps, but they offer good stuff.
Well, no, I know that, I understand. That was a question is because it, again, due to the district, so
Yeah.
still learning.
Yeah.
I can speak for like the 9 weeks as well, because my children go to a 9-week school. My kids attend Mathis. I have a 7th grader and a 4th grader. And they get, every 3 weeks, they get a progress report. And so eligibility also plays into all of that. The parents get a weekly newsletter, like mentioning when their child will be eligible or not eligible. And then I think like the teachers, that last week of the 9 weeks, the teachers work not the teachers, the students go for half day, and the rest of the days for interventions, for those students who need interventions. And then the last week, well, not the last week, after the 9 weeks, they have a week off. So that's how they do it over there. But, so I see that, I've seen it that way, and then I like the 6 weeks here too, so. I mean, I see both of them, and I'm for
But
either
Mathis
or.
starts like in the end of July, right?
What was that?
Mathis, they start like the end of July, as opposed to like.
Yes,
kind
they
of
started
like
at the end of
middle.
July.
Are they also year-round?
They like Star
Yes,
Wars.
yes.
Okay.
Not
They are.
like the Star Wars.
But so they're year-round, but do
Start
it,
the
yeah,
year.
a little bit later.
This
Do they go
past
in
year, they
June?
started a little bit later, but usually they start like a week after us.
But I don't think they go
London
in.
starts a week after us and they're year round.
Yeah, and then you London's year-round. When does Mathis, end?
The same as us, the same week.
Oh, same week?
So I just assume they probably don't have a very nice long winter break like we do, which is probably the difference between us and everybody else this year round.
Even CCISD has gone to a more year-round type
They have a fall
of school.
break.
They have a fall break, a Thanksgiving, and then
They just had it
Christmas.
last
They just had it, yeah.
Yeah, they just don't call it intercession, but it is their intercession week long.
Because in the state rule, to be considered year-round, you just have to go 11 months out of the year, right?
It's,
Or is it
it doesn't
10
quite,
months? No.
it's really, we're,
One day into
to be
it.
honest with you, we're not even really year-round.
Yeah,
Because year-round to me is, you don't really have a summer break or like really a winter break. It's like the 4-day work week where things are very consistent all the way across for 12 months. That's true year-round
Wow.
school.
Sure.
We're more modified, we just call it year-round because we've been doing it for so long. And it just sounds, it's easier to say we're a year-round school because we kind of are. But when you really think about it, we have about 4 to 5 weeks off in the summer where we don't come.
Yeah, and y'all have
And I
to run a summer
misspoke.
program.
I was thinking District of Innovation.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
the District of Innovation is what allows you to really use the minutes for year-round purposes. But what's so interesting about TM is that we have not used DOI for that. We use another policy, flexible policy, to do the year-round, which very rare. It's very rare that a district did it that way. We did it that way. Everybody else did it through the DOI, which came later, which is why you're seeing Corpus Christi and all these other districts being able to move when they start school and are moving more towards what we have. They just don't really call some of the things that we call it, but generally speaking, it's the same thing, right?
They still don't start till August.
Right.
That July start is really hard. For kids who participate in summer baseball or select volleyball.
The swim team's going to California this year, that made it to nationals.
Right.
And it's that first week.
And that's probably honestly what's affecting transfers, is because it's hard for them to transfer in. I mean, we all know enrollment goes up as soon as CCISD starts. They all enroll. Now, our transfers that are rollover transfers that have been here and have been transfers, that's fine. It's that kinder first and second grade transfer group or new transfers to the district that don't start until CCISD starts.
And so with that being considered, if we didn't start in July, then that really doesn't make us year-round because then we're really taking off even more
Yeah.
June and July almost But if we're trying to factor that in, but we're also trying to keep our year-round status, it's like, how do we find the balance, right? Because she's absolutely right.
Cake and we want to eat
The
it.
data tells us that our transfers work that way.
Summer. That's what we need to do.
So, this is good stuff. We're getting warmed up here. We're going to be really, really good at the second meeting. I know it. So, students, and just kind of finishing this here, again, professional development, work days, planning time, grade reporting, all these will be factors. We will capture this data in the survey. I will show you guys as the last thing before we leave out of here. But until then, we have a few more things to kind of just make sure we're good with. PD requirements, just a quick document here that kind of just, again, goes over some of those requirements. I'm sure this is where I'll find about my compliance trainings and what I should have done rather than what I actually did. So I will definitely reread this when I get home. But this is just a good document because, again, it kind of just step by step goes through some of those essentials. And anybody who's ever been to this website, TCTA, they always have really good stuff. And so, for instance, like provide training on suicide prevention and all that good stuff. Very basic, yearly things that we all do. That's a good document for you. In particular, when it comes to PD, new teacher orientation is a critical day. Our in-service week is super important, but does it really need to be a week? Do we just need to have X amount of days? Or do we need to just make sure we are covering X amount of stuff? And whether we can get that done in 1 day, or 3 days, or 5 days. So again, remember, going from 9 PD days down to 7. And so how are we going to get everything we need to get in, but also allowing that to cover us for the entire year? Talked enough about that. And then, of course, professional learning communities. The thing that used to be, but no longer is. Does anybody miss it? Anybody miss Wednesdays? Early release Wednesdays? Got a couple heads.
High school English misses it.
Yeah.
Because they really did meet and they really did, that was their only chance for like all the freshman teachers to work together and all the sophomore teachers.
Yeah.
I know they do miss it.
I miss it.
I miss it.
I miss it. If someone were to ask me, do you miss it? Yeah, I miss it. That was the sad thing for me last year when we decided to remove that. I found that time useful because I know if you're a planner and you need time to plan and you've got to go do things, well, that was great time because I didn't have to find the time. The time was already there for me. Now, there is no time because now everybody's busy, in session with students, face-to-face, and the only time to really meet is either before or after. And we all know sometimes that doesn't work for everybody. And so that doesn't mean that we are bound to the no more PLC time, but if there is a need or you're starting to recognize what we had and now that we don't, it's kind of like you don't know what you have until it's gone. If you guys are falling into that mindset or just can speak more about that, we can definitely revisit PLC.
I think it's different at the elementary level though.
Oh, for
because,
sure.
like in secondary, they're bigger. You can open your doors, they're gone. And at the lower level, like we have to, till they're all clear, till they're all picked up, so we're spending a lot of that PLC time monitoring our kids and waiting and, it's a little different. So by the time we get to PLC, it's like, how much time do we really have?
Yep, great points.
Too bad we didn't have the football schedule for next year and plan those half days or PLC afternoons.
Just wondering, was that decision, was that made in a committee like this?
Everything was made in the committee.
To get rid of PLCs?
Yes.
The consensus was
Yes.
what? That they weren't being used?
Yes.
Well, okay.
It would be, but that time we better spent teaching because our students need as much instructional time as possible.
Okay.
So,
Just wondering.
yeah, to also help with that, that's another reason why we're also moving to 180 days to provide even more instructional time for our students, but also to be eligible for specific grants and things like that.
Okay.
And so with the balance going back with 2 additional days with students, maybe there can be some flexibility with adding some PLC time. And again, it doesn't have to be every Wednesday. It could be once a month. It could be every other month. It could be on designated days. So that's the flexibility with this calendar. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. if we like PLC and find the value, but as long as it works for certain people, we can look at doing more specific or intentional designated days for PLC. Might even be better to have late arrival, where we do PLC in the morning, and students come after we're done PLCing. Because as adults, we're usually fresher in the morning than we are in the afternoons. Okay? And so we've talked a little bit about these variables here. This is stuff that we will keep in mind as we move forward, particularly the athletics and the program requirements. For instance, like CTE and dual credit. Ms. Moody already spoke a little bit about the MOU we have with our dual credit post-secondary institutions, where it's really crucial for high school and ACC to have their calendars aligned because of the program requirements in those classes. Here, again, as a reminder, the additional days school year grant is going to be something we pursue, and that'll be something that gets more, we get more involved with that next semester. But currently, the optional flexible school day program is something that we are currently in the process of finalizing our application for. The goal is to bring the application to the school board in November for their review and approval, which will allow ACC and high school to operate specific students and their schedules differently than our traditional students. And that will help us with attendance and also helping students who may need a little additional differentiated scheduling in order to better meet their needs, for them to be more successful and to graduate on time and so forth. And so that will be another new layer that will be factored in as we move forward, but we will talk more about that after November. And then, of course, student considerations. Thinking about the students, spring break, intersession week. Our spring break is an intersession. It's like, are you saying it could be one and the other? I think that's interesting. I wonder how that's going to work out this year. Yeah, usually we don't have one in March.
I don't think our second semester is as balanced as our first semester.
It's not.
But
Isn't, but it's because of testing.
is, but is the spring break the same for here as CCSD?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the first year.
Sorry,
First year that
Yeah, once people found that out, they kind of gave like a boo, like face.
Well, but
But you don't get the amusement parks to yourself anymore. You don't get to go on vacations and
Yeah, but we have
right, you have to be around people.
We don't want to be around.
COVID even made that worse, right?
what is the absence status?
Take it in the
For what?
spring. You won't
Absence
take it
status
for us
say
home.
that if our spring break is different than CCISD, if it's
It's really not that bad.
Yeah, the only day is senior skip day.
It doesn't shock you as you would think. It kind of is like another week.
So it's because it's their spring break and our intersession's different.
Right.
All the seniors skip on that Friday.
well, sure.
I mean, I didn't, so.
Shoot,
And
seniors that
My bad.
two more
But the seniors are
things.
gonna pick a day to skip regardless.
regardless.
Yes.
I understand
It
that.
doesn't matter what's going to happen with that. One other thing, state assessment days, that will be something that will be built into the template calendar when we complete our calendars, just as a reminder. And then, of course, another unique quality of TM, the NCJLS days in January. Those dates are here just as a consideration and reminder. On to 4-day instructional week. Again, always an opinion on this, always something to say. There is not enough research currently to say one way or another if this is actually benefiting or hurting students. But I will say that with every passing year, more and more districts are hopping on the 4-day instructional week kind of bandwagon. And these districts here are the bigger 4A districts, where if we are wanting a comparison to someone that looks similar to us, these would be good districts to look at. These districts' calendars have been linked, so you can click here and take a look at how they've set things up. What's interesting about the 4-day instructional week is that no two 4-day work weeks are the same. They're all significantly different from each other. And so it's just interesting because that flexibility allows even greater flexibility in terms of how are you wanting to use that 5th day? What will that look like? Will it be every other week? Will it be this? Every other week? Will it be that? And so, again, in your spare time, since you have so much of it, click on one of these districts, take a look and see what it looks like, and yeah, go from there.
If y'all do 4-day the 4-day instructional week, would that change like your intersessions?
It could possibly, yes.
It would have to.
But I mean, if we're worried about finding
necessarily.
things for kids to do on intercession, what are they gonna do that one day every week?
Oh, I feel like all the extracurricular groups would wanna be working with them on that one
Yeah.
day. We'd all be fighting each other to try and work with them. And then.
I mean, like the littles, right?
Oh, that too.
Like, so we're worried about the week that we take, what about the every Friday that we take?
Some districts going to know, does it affect like some of their child nutrition funds because they don't have Friday to school? So that is something.
Significant. Everything gets impacted.
And then,
If you are curious about why would anybody want to go to a 4-day instructional week? Well, for districts that have been really promoting it, I've been able to capture some of their kind of just communication and media that they're pushing out to kind of support the 4-day week. Feel free to, again, click here, look at New Waverly, that's outside of Houston. So again, click here, take a look, see what is all in these documents.
I have a question.
Yeah?
If we hypothetically 4-day, like, would it be locked in? Because I think I read on one of them, it was like locked in for 3 years. or
That's a
something?
district decision.
Okay.
They probably just want to give it enough time to see, and they probably realize that if they don't do it, it could be pulled from them the next year. So why don't we just all agree for 3 years, we're going to try this. We could, in this committee, decide that if we want the calendar we're going to create to be a 2-year calendar, it can be. We just do 1 year because that's just what we do, but that doesn't mean we can't say, we want this calendar to be for 24-25 and 25-26. That means, because we don't like to be around people very often, we wouldn't have to see each other.
I don't like being around people very often. Joking.
Right?
Can I
So-
go back just to something, just to ask a question? Do you know the percentage of students that are involved in the livestock show in our district?
I don't have that data off the top of my head.
I was just wondering how much it's affecting all the rest of us to take that entire week for, like, how many?
Yeah, it's one of those, are we getting the bang for the buck on that? I would probably say no, given just how many students I can think of that would be impacted versus our overall population across the district. We're making a big decision that impacts everybody for a very small group. That's kind of, I think that was the message there, right?
Yeah, because I've been in other districts, we have rodeos in Houston, but you
Yeah,
don't
it's
get a
like the
week off.
entire spring semester is the
The kids get excuses
Yeah,
for
they
that
get
time, but
excused
it's not.
As teachers, because I don't know the statistic, but I don't think it's as many involved as we think there is, or that there used to be. But what's worse, or what's more beneficial or less beneficial, having a whole week off for everybody, or, because every year we get the 4-H clubs get school board approval to say, even though they're not a TM organization, they get approval. It's an excused absence. If you say you're in the stock show, what's more disruptive or beneficial to the whole district? To be open that week, but the kids that are involved, you get an excused absence. All you have to do is show that you have your projects, you have your things. So maybe you don't miss the whole week, because I know unless you've got a bunch of stuff going on, usually people only show one type of animal, but I know they have all that other stuff. They have all that other contests and other things that you can enter. But you know, what is better, having the whole district have the whole week off, or just take the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that you're showing your animal or that you're doing your thing? Is it worse for the kid to miss 2 days during the week and have to catch up on their assignments?
At my last
I don't know.
district, the issue wasn't just, it was a large amount of kids involved in that. It was the other kids just wouldn't come to school because they wanted to go to
We
theirs.
didn't have the week off when I was in high school, and a bunch of kids just didn't show up.
They just didn't come. And we just quit fighting that battle.
And I think that was some of the reason why they just decided, why fight it? They're not, if it's gonna have this impact on this group, but there's also these additional students are trying to, take advantage of that, we're just gonna give everybody that time off. However, like Mr. Carroll said, we have attendance waivers for that, where if they show proof, but we not only get them to be excused, but we still count them for ADA because it's technically a school-related experience. It's basically a field trip.
Well,
So-
maybe it's not like we have the whole week, but maybe they get like a
Thursday,
day off. Like,
Friday.
everybody gets a day off. They can go watch the livestock or go.
It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Maybe
Like
it's
the
just
big
one
show
day.
days. Thursday, Fridays are the big show days. Wednesday, they drop their animals off.
Like that way we don't like,
Yeah.
because in the past, the problem's been coming back for a week
Right.
and then leaving for a week. And then it's like, why did I start a whole new 6 weeks in a unit and then trying to do it all over again the next
There
week?
was a, like, second or third year I taught here, they did have us come for 2 or 3 of the days.
We would go
It was like
on
Monday,
and
Tuesday. And I remember, because I taught second, I had 20 students in my class, 22. And I only had 7 students that entire, those days.
doing like a
Because their
2-day week just
siblings
didn't
were
work.
showing. They weren't showing, but their siblings were showing and had to be there at like 6:30
You're saying it's a
to feed
family
the animals.
experience.
And so it's like they just,
All year long.
the parents are like, I can't be in 2 places at once. And that was a big pushback the year we did it. They just didn't come.
Like the numbers in the show.
And then we lost.
We used to
money
be
for
the biggest
attendance.
livestock show in the
Well,
county.
I get that.
And the other thing is, why is stock show different than tennis or volleyball or football, where they miss days that are excused and they have to make it up anyway? I mean, and I had a stock show, I mean, I had 2 stock show kids. And number one, we didn't have to be up there all day, every day. You know, they had animals, and, you know, we had to go up and feed and take care and water and all that kind of stuff. But we didn't have to be there all day, every day. So I mean.
So what are you
and-
really saying, Ms. Van Zandt?
Well, I'm saying, I don't know why we have that whole week off. I mean, I don't know why those kids can't, and again, I'm saying that as a stock show parent. If I needed to take my kids out to do whatever they needed to do, I would take it, and then they'd have to make up their work, and
Like
it
anybody
would be
else.
done.
Let's have a sign-in list at the stock show every day for them.
Yeah?
Every TM student sign in, see how many kids.
Well, I mean, they'd still have to make up the work. It'd be just like all the sports kids and the theater kids and UIL kids that miss school and.
Just like everybody else.
Messing with your system.
Like the ones that will have to take off and they won't be there for their
classes.
Most of their classes would be there, except for like, I guess floral design and stuff like that.
Well, but then if you have that week of school and that there's teachers taking off, then you have to come up with a sub-budget, right? Cover.
Lots of
But I mean,
things.
like, when we take off, I have to have a sub for my
Looking at
class.
this thing or that thing, it's.
The same
It really is that, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the same,
It's the same as any other UIL.
all of us.
I mean,
But
if you were an instructional teacher, whether you're ag instruction or theater or science or whatever, if you have to be out, they have to provide a sub.
Yeah.
So the sub budget, I would think, would be not impacted enough to, I don't know, but I don't know how many teachers we're talking about.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. That's why it's gonna be something we factor in and ask about in this survey. And one thing in particular with this survey is just, as a committee and part of what we're doing as a district, as far as building a strategic plan, updating our district improvement plan, our campus improvement plans, is becoming as data-driven as we can, so that we're as well-informed about the decisions we're making as we can in the most fair and equitable manner, so that it's not like we're leaning towards this because we kind of have this agenda or we're motivated by this reason. It's, what does the data tell us? And can we all agree that the data tells us this, therefore we are going to make decisions that will look like that, right? That's what this calendar survey here is going to allow us to do. So of course we have our opinions, and yes, we're going to use those opinions. And of course, everybody here will receive the same survey link. So again, I encourage you to fill it out. And when we're done, and when we meet again, which will be Wednesday, November 1st, it'll be here before we know it. We will be looking at this data, and that will be what we kind of pick up and go.
16th.
Did it?
Yeah, at the bottom it says the first, but at the top it says the 16th.
Okay, then it's the 16th. Now I don't know.
Oh, our next meeting. Oh, our next meeting is on, yeah.
16. 16.
Kidding. Okay. But you
I was
want
like, that's way too
Thursday,
soon.
you want the survey completed by when?
I don't know yet.
I heard you want the
There's so
survey
many
completed
questions, so
by
many
November
dates, so many
1st.
things due. I just want to go to trunk or treat, y'all.
Thursday, Thursday, 16th is a Thursday. They might just so that people don't.
Here's what I'm gonna do. Meeting number 2.
It's a
I'll see you when I see you. Any questions, email me, but that's our next step, is we're gonna send out the survey, get that data, and we will meet whenever we do meet. I'll send everybody a summary email update with all that information. Thank you. Have a great rest of your afternoon.